man of God, the life of the God of football is with you.
All right, let's talk about a man who was a god and a cheat, a legend and a tragedy, all rolled into one. A footballer who could seem absolutely divine one moment, and then so deeply, humanly flawed the next. And sometimes he showed us both sides of that coin in the span of just 4 minutes. We are, of course, talking about Diego Armando Maradona.
And yeah, those 4 minutes I just mentioned, they happened at the 1986 World Cup. It's kind of wild, but you can see the entire Maradona paradox play out right there. In a single match, he scored 2 of the most legendary goals in history, but for completely opposite reasons. One was an act of pure brilliant cheating, the other, an act of pure brilliant genius.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're at Azteca Stadium in Mexico City. It's the World Cup quarterfinal, Argentina versus England. And the tension? You could cut it with a knife. We're 6 minutes into the second half, scores tied at 0-0. Everyone is on the edge of their seat.
And then it happens. The first moment. The ball loops down into the penalty area, and you've got Maradona, who's only 5'5", mind you, going up against the English keeper Peter Shilton, who's way taller. But does he head it? Nope, he punches it, with his hand, right into the back of the net. The ref completely misses it, the goal stands. You'd think he'd be a little sheepish about it, right? No way. His explanation after the game was just as bold as the move itself. He didn't own up to it. Instead, he just made it part of his own myth, famously saying it was scored a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. And just like that, the hand of God goal was born.
But then, just 4 minutes later, he does something that leaves everyone's jaws on the floor. An act of pure, undeniable genius. He gets the ball way back in his own half, turns, and just takes off. He dribbles 60 meters, slicing through the entire English defense. We're talking 5 different players left in his dust. He even rounds the keeper and calmly puts it in the goal. It was so incredible that FIFA later voted it the goal of the century.
So, what do you make of that? How can the same guy be a cheat 1 minute and a genius the next? It's a huge question, right? And to really get it, you have to understand that this game, it wasn't just about soccer.
Yeah, for Argentina, this was so much more than a game. That explosion of joy you saw, it was about vindication. And to get why, we need to rewind the clock a little bit to some very real and very recent pain.
See, just 4 years before this match, Argentina had lost a war to Great Britain. A really painful, humiliating defeat in the Falklands War, or as they call it, the Malvinas War. That wound was still wide open, and this was the first time they were facing off on a big stage since then. The stakes were incredibly high.
And that's why these goals meant everything. For millions of Argentinians, the hand of God wasn't cheating. It was payback. It was clever. And that second goal, that wasn't just skill, it was a statement. It was a symbolic victory that did more for the national pride than any politician ever could. Now, his legend wasn't just forged at the World Cup. To really understand Maradona, the icon, we have to go to Naples, a city in southern Italy that basically adopted him as their king, their demigod. So when Maradona showed up at Napoli in 1984, they weren't exactly a powerhouse, just a scrappy team from a city that was always looked down on by the rich, powerful clubs up north. But that's the thing about Maradona. He didn't join a powerhouse, he created one. His old coach put it perfectly. Diego turned a marching band into an orchestra.
And his impact was just seismic. I mean, look at this. Before him, Napoli had never won the top league title in Italy. With him, they won it twice. They took down the giants, Juventus, Milan, and gave that city a taste of glory it had never known before.
His connection to Naples was so deep, so powerful, that it led to this absolutely wild moment in the 1990 World Cup. Italy was hosting it, right? And the semifinal was Argentina versus Italy, happening in Naples. And get this, a huge chunk of the hometown crowd cheered for Maradona's Argentina against their own country. That's how much he meant to them. But here's the other side of that coin. That same fire, that rebellious spirit that made him a genius on the field, it was also the thing that led to his downfall. You know, the pressure of being a living god for millions of people, it's going to take a toll.
And this is really the key to understanding the whole Maradona phenomenon. People didn't love him in spite of his flaws. In a lot of ways, they loved him because of them.
For places like Naples and Argentina, these underdogs, his mistakes weren't just mistakes. They were acts of defiance against the establishment. The writer Eduardo Galeano nailed it when he called him a dirty, sinful god. His struggles made him relatable. He was a god who could stumble and fall just like the rest of us. And those troubles, they became very public, very fast. At the absolute peak of his powers in Italy, his demons really caught up with him. In 1991, he tested positive for cocaine. The result? He was banned from the sport for 15 long months.
Eventually, he had to leave Italy, and it wasn't a happy exit. He was being chased by the authorities for like 40 million euros in back taxes. He was this huge mess that basically hung over him for the rest of his life.
And his time with the Argentinian national team, it didn't end with a blaze of glory. It ended in scandal. He got kicked out of the 1994 World Cup in the US after failing another drug test, a really sad way for a legend to go out.
So, all those years of pushing his body to the absolute brink, the vicious tackles on the field, the hard living off of it all caught up with him. And it led to this really tragic ending that, as you'll see, a lot of people think could have been avoided.
Maradona passed away from a heart attack. He was only 60 years old. And what's crazy is, it was just a few weeks after he'd had successful surgery on his brain. He was supposed to be recovering.
But his death wasn't the end of the story. It immediately kicked off a criminal investigation. And what they found? It's just shocking. A medical board looked into it and basically said his care was completely negligent. They found that he was suffering for at least 12 hours before he died, and his medical team just ignored the signs.
The final report was brutal. It concluded that if he just had proper medical care, he probably would have survived. Instead, their words were that his health was abandoned to its fate. As a result, 7 people from his medical staff were charged with involuntary manslaughter. So, where does that leave us? Who was Diego Maradona? Was he this flawed idol who couldn't escape his demons? Or was he the ultimate people's champion, the guy who gave hope to the little guy? The thing is, he was never one or the other. He was both. A messy, complicated hero for a messy, complicated world. And maybe, just maybe, that's what made him the greatest. And for sure, the most human footballer we've ever seen.
If you subscribe to our channel, we are glad. Thank you.